So, something's happening in Taiwan, and it's a trend that's really worrying. We're seeing a new wave of crime taking hold among young people. And we're not just talking about minor stuff here. We're seeing a really significant spike in kids getting pulled into organized fraud. So in this explainer, we're going to dig into why this is happening, and maybe more importantly, we're going to look at a proven roadmap for how to fix it.
Okay, let's just get right to it, the big number. Since 2019, there's been a 14% jump in the number of juvenile suspects. Now, a 14% jump, that's not just some random number on a spreadsheet. That's a huge red flag. It's telling us that something fundamental is changing for young people in Taiwan. But a number this big is never about just one thing, right? So what's really going on behind the scenes?
And here's where it gets really interesting. When you actually look inside that 14% increase, the story becomes crystal clear. It's not the stuff you might expect, like theft or drugs. Nope. The number one crime, and it's not even close, is fraud. This is the real insight here. Gangs have found this incredibly effective new business model, pulling in teenagers as low-level money mules. It's creating a direct pipeline from the schoolyard into organized crime. So you're probably asking, why now? What's going on? Well, it's not just one thing, it's more like a perfect storm. A collision of 4 different forces that are all coming together and just tearing holes in the safety nets that are supposed to protect young people. And you'll see how each of these things kind of stacks on top of the other. It all starts with teachers feeling like they can't report potential problems. That then gets made worse by loopholes in the legal system that gangs are just brilliant at exploiting. All of this creates the perfect environment for these youth fraud rings to pop up. And it's all happening while there's this growing security gap on school campuses. Let's break down exactly how this whole chain reaction gets started. All right, let's start at ground zero, the classroom. There's a law called the Child Rights Protection Act, and it was created with the best of intentions, obviously, to protect kids. But it's actually had this chilling effect, a totally unintended consequence. It puts such a heavy procedural and legal burden on teachers that many of them are now afraid to report potential issues. So they pull back, they act conservatively to protect themselves, and just like that, the first line of defense for a kid in trouble, it's gone. At the exact same time, the legal system itself is actually being used against the kids it's supposed to protect. You see, there have been reforms to the Juvenile Justice Act that favor rehabilitation over punishment, which sounds great. But gangs are twisting this message. They're actively going to teens and selling them this idea, this lie, that the new laws mean there are no consequences. And for a teenager, that is a really powerful and really dangerous sales pitch. And the last piece of this puzzle? It's a power vacuum right there on school grounds. Taiwan is in the middle of phasing out its military instructors from campuses. And while they're being replaced by new safety staff and counselors, that transition isn't complete. It creates this gap, this window of opportunity, where it's not clear who's in charge. And you can bet those gangs we were just talking about are jumping right through it. Okay, so that all sounds pretty bleak, right? But here's the good news. This is not a story without a solution. In fact, there's a really powerful, evidence-based model that already exists. And for that, we've got to look way up north, to Iceland. The whole idea behind what Iceland did is, honestly, it's brilliant in its simplicity. They decided to focus on what is basically the most dangerous time of day for any teenager, those 2 or 3 unstructured hours right after school lets out. Instead of leaving that time empty and unsupervised, they decided to systematically fill it up. They flooded communities with subsidized, easy-to-access activities, sports, music, art, you name it. You see, it's not about wagging a finger and saying, don't get into trouble. It's about making sure there's no time to get into trouble in the first place. And you know what the best part is? This isn't some pie-in-the-sky idea. Bringing this to Taiwan is actually pretty straightforward. The proposal really boils down to 3 concrete things. First, guarantee spots in these programs for kids who are most at risk. Second, create what they call a 3-hour no-gap policy right after school, using buildings we already have, like schools and community centers. And third, you just track the data, see who's showing up, see what the impact is, and use that info to keep making it better. Now, a big community program like the Iceland model is fantastic, but it works even better when you pair it with some really smart, targeted actions. So besides rebuilding that social safety net, what other surgical tools can the legal system use to make a difference right now? So one of the sharpest tools in the toolbox is something called focused deterrence. This isn't about casting a wide net. It's super targeted. Picture this. You get police, social workers, community leaders all in one room with a specific kid who's heading down the wrong path. And in that room, they make two things incredibly clear. One, here are the very serious consequences if you continue. But two, and this is the crucial part, here is a real, tangible offer of support to help you choose a different path. It's a mix of consequences and an off-ramp. Okay, so how would this actually work for that fraud problem we talked about at the beginning? Well, you could create a fast-track system. A teen gets picked up in one of these fraud rings. The very first step isn't to judge. It's a joint interview to figure out one simple thing. Were you a victim who got tricked, or were you an active participant? If you're a victim, you get path A, protection and support. But if you were a willing perpetrator, that's when you get path B. Focused deterrence kicks in, and mom and dad get a call. And, there are also these proven, super low-cost ways to step in before a crime even happens. A great example is Chicago's Becoming a Man program. It used something called cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which is basically about teaching kids to hit the pause button in a heated moment to think before they act. By putting these kinds of courses right into the school day, you can give at-risk students the mental tools they need to handle conflict without resorting to violence. So these individual programs are awesome, right? But for them to stick around and really make a difference long-term, they need to be part of a bigger, stronger system. And that means rebuilding the whole foundational safety net with a few really key ideas in mind. And here's the real secret sauce to making any of this happen. It's not about throwing a ton of money at the problem. It's about a philosophy. Every single one of these proposals that works is built on three simple ideas. Keep it simple, so people can actually do it. Make it spreadable, so it can go from one community to the next. And make it monitorable, so you always know if it's actually working. Because if it's too complicated, it's dead on arrival. Okay, let's circle back to that security gap on campus for a second. The job of keeping schools safe is changing. It's moving away from just discipline, like the old military instructors, toward coordination and counseling. But here's the critical piece that's missing right now. The new folks, they don't have a direct official line to the local police or social services. And without that connection, that bridge, they're working all alone. The whole safety net just falls apart. And how do you make sure all this actually gets done and isn't just a bunch of nice ideas? You use data. The proposal is dead simple. Every city has to report on these 4 key numbers every single quarter. Think of it like a public scorecard. It would show everyone instantly which cities are getting kids into programs and which aren't. And more importantly, it would show whether any of this is actually working to bring down fraud and violence. So, when you look at the whole picture, filling that after-school gap, using smarter legal tools, and rebuilding the system with data and clear roles, a really clear path forward starts to take shape. The sources we're looking at make it obvious that the answers don't need to be super complex or incredibly expensive. What they do need is consistency. They need a real focused commitment. The only real question left is, are we ready to commit?